Hey, how's it going? I'm Ron.
I'm Zach.
We're from Widetrack, and it's another episode of Influences. And we're still in our top 5 lists by decade segments here. So this week we're into the 80s. And the 80s are kind of a tricky decade because the more popular 80s stuff is either the hair metal stuff or the English pop, or maybe some goth stuff and this and that. But and to be honest, we're not as into the 80s stuff for the most part, but we did find a few cool little gems that we wanted to put on our list. So without further ado, Zach, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is Killers by Iron Maiden. So this is when Paul Di'Anno still sang, and Steve Harris was playing bass, and yeah.
I agree. That's a fantastic album.
Yeah, just a bunch of cool songs, really inspiring bass stuff, especially on a show called Influences. How could I not mention something that has influenced me so?
Yep. My number 5 list is Queensryche, Rage for Order. The first EP and then the first album, The Warning and Rage for Order, they're all pretty close for me. But Rage for Order is kind of like the bridge between the old metal Queensryche and what they eventually became on the classic Operation Mindcrime album. I wore that album out when it came out. It was insane how much I listened to that album. I had never heard a singer belt it out with, at the time, kind of a alluring, exotic strangeness of the dark mystique of Jeff Tate, and the thought-provoking lyrics and the production just really caught my ear. Was really pushing the envelope for what I was listening to at the time. So I gotta give it up for that one. Haven't listened to that one in a long time, but years later they did an MTV Unplugged, and they did a fantastic remake of one of the songs called The Killing Words, and I still listen to that one. That's just amazing how they reimagined that song. And so on our Spotify playlist I've included that version. But anyhow, Queensryche, Rage for Order, my number 5.
Alright, moving on to number 4. My number 4 is Diary of a Madman. Now, I would put this much higher, but I regret to inform you. Like a lot of 80s stuff, like a lot of stuff in general, I have not given it a fair enough listen to really judge it above or below too many other things. A lot of stuff on this list, for me, is all kind of in the same general area, and it's only very slight differences that put one title up over another. That being said, there's no doubt in my mind that Diary of a Madman is one of the most killer albums of all time. I mean, let me think here. Let me think. Randy Rhoads.
Well, that album was going to be on one of our lists. I agree, Diary of a Madman. Every single song on it is phenomenal. And really, the first Ozzy album, Blizzard of Oz, and Diary of a Madman, the 2 albums with Randy Rhoads, they just need to be one album, because every single thing on both of those albums is phenomenal. The thing I find interesting about those albums is if you open up the Diary of a Madman liner notes, the band that is credited in the picture on the inner sleeve is not the band that plays on the albums. The first 2 albums had a different rhythm section. It was Ozzy and Randy Rhoads, and then a different bass player named Bob Daisley and a drummer named Lee Kerslake, and they kind of got shoved out before Diary of a Madman was released, and then they got replaced on the inner sleeve credits. Thanks, Sharon Osbourne. Good job. Anyhow, they deserve a lot of credit because Bob Daisley's the guy that wrote all the lyrics. He wrote all the lyrics to those first two albums. Like, if you like Crazy Train, Flying High Again, Over the Mountain, all that stuff, that's not Ozzy's lyrics. Those are Bob Daisley's. And there was just a lot of bad stuff that happened with them not getting the credit they deserve. So I kind of felt that I needed to take a minute to do that. But anyhow, my number 4 is Van Halen, Fair Warning. It was painful coming up with. It was a close call between that one and a few other things.
A lot of the stuff is all like very close to a definite number 1. You know, it's all in this sort of middle section where there's quite a few things, but a lot of them aren't dynamically better than the others, so it makes listing them very difficult.
And Van Halen's Women and Children first album was 1980, and Fair Warning was 1981, and it's pretty close with those albums for me. But Fair Warning just had, the impact that they made back then, it's just undeniable. Eddie Van Halen revolutionized guitar. He's deserving of every accolade he's ever gotten and more. He's probably, arguably, the most important thing that ever happened to rock guitar in terms of innovation. For better, for worse, is all a matter of opinion. But I like Fair Warning because it's just got a darkness about it. It's kind of like the redheaded stepchild of an album, so to speak. The drumming is killer on it. Alex Van Halen is so underrated as a drummer. I just got to give it up for the dude. And there's some really cool diversity on that album. There's a song called Push Comes to Shove that is just got a really low-key, groovy kind of funk thing about it. And Eddie Van Halen's guitar harmonic intro to Mean Street is one of the most amazing guitar wizardry inventions you'll ever hear. So that's my number 4, Fair Warning, Van Halen.
All right, moving on to number 3. This one kind of tied with Diary of a Madman for me, mostly because I listened to this one a little bit more and recognize the songs off of it a little bit more. And that would be Screaming for Vengeance by Judas Priest. This album's just cool.
A lot of metal on this list. True metal. Like the old new British wave of heavy metal stuff. Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Ozzy. Good stuff.
It starts off with the Hellion Electric Eye.
Right?
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
rocks,
that's so cool.
That's beautiful.
And going down the list, there's lots of cool stuff. Take These Chains, Bloodstone, Screaming for Vengeance.
Good heavens.
You got Another Thing Coming even.
Great album, man. A song called Fever on there that I love. It's a really cool intro. Riding on the Wind. That album is
chock full of lovely, undeniable, definitive Judas Priest
metal. My number 3 is by a band called Marillion. An album called Clutching at Straws. This came out in 1987. Great album. It's phenomenal. I saw him on that tour, and it was one of the best concerts of my life. It was a small club in Detroit, and every person in the crowd was singing along with every word. It was amazing. I got to meet the band afterwards, and I snuck in the line the second time, and I found the set list, took it off the stage, and had them all sign it. And I'll never forget the smell of Fish's breath as he was telling me what some of his lyrics meant, because he's just the most amazing lyricist, like beyond great. One of the best lyricists ever, in my opinion. Clutching at Straws, I can't recommend it enough. They had a big hit with their album before that, which was called Misplaced Childhood, and they were with the hit song Kaylee, and right around that time, a lot of children that were born were named Kaylee. So if you know any Kayleys, it's good bet that they were named after that song. Anyhow, that's a great album too. So that's my number 3.
All right. Moving on to number 2, I have a Yes album. It is Drama. Drama is the best Yes album of the 80s. To me, it is the last album with Steve Howe, and even though the vocalist sounds like John Anderson, like a lot, it's actually not John Anderson. It's him and the keyboardist were the guys from what was it?
Oh, the Buggles.
No, the
yeah,
Buggles.
Trevor Horn and Jeff Downs.
Yeah, and they were the ones who played on the album. And they actually did quite a bit for the album, I think. Like, they did a lot of the writing. I don't particularly remember, though. Anyways, the song's got a lot of cool songs. The album's got a lot of cool songs. My apologies. Lots of cool bass stuff. Machine Messiah is one of my favorites. I mean, it's cool. It's really progressive in the sense that it goes, it's got a lot of different sections to it, which I enjoy in a song. If it's going to be 10 minutes, at least have at least 13 different sections. I mean, come on. But, good album. Most of it's great. You can't even tell it's not the real band.
Yeah, I love Tempest Fugit
Yeah.
and Into the Lens. That's a great album. It's interesting because Trevor Horn does sound like, if you're not a fan of Yes, you won't know the difference. You'll hear it and you'll think it's John
You heard
Anderson.
nothing.
Yeah, but it's interesting because the next album they did after that, which came out in I think 83 or 84, was their big 90125 album. And that was produced by Trevor Horn.
Yeah,
so
that's the one with Closer to the Heart, which or not
Owner of a Lonely Heart.
Owner of a Lonely Heart.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just
Yeah.
begin to I need help.
Yeah, that album that Steve Howe wasn't on it, Trevor Rabin was on it. It's a lot of weird little things, like Trevor Rabin is the guitarist on that. Trevor Horn was no longer the singer, but he did produce the album. And he did a great job. That's probably their most successful album. Certainly their most successful of the 80s.
Anyways.
But Drama.
It's the most artistically good.
Yeah.
So Drama, good album. Lots of Trevor.
Yeah.
Wait, no, that's the next one. A little bit of Trevor.
Yeah, right?
Onwards.
Trevor squared. So, anyhow. TNT.
Okay.
Edit. Okay, my number 2 is Rush, Signals. It's a tough one picking between Signals, Moving Pictures, and Permanent Waves. But I had to go with Signals. That album gets, in my opinion, unfairly criticized as being part of the keyboard era of Rush, but the thing about Signals is it's the last album produced by Terry Brown, and everything
Terry Brown knew it was up.
Yeah,
so.
Everything Terry Brown produced, Signals and back, is to me the classic era of Rush. And Signals, coming off of Moving Pictures, they could have done Moving Pictures Part 2 with Tom Sawyer and all that,
and
Part
King
2.
Arthur or whatever,
Yeah. But they decided
book
they're
names.
going to try and follow their noses, follow their creativity, and it is what caused Terry Brown to leave and not produce them anymore.
Because they wanted to try all the new stuff, and
they wanted to expand, they wanted to progress, they didn't want to stay in one place, and I think the songs just hold up really well. The side 1 is the perfect album side. Subdivisions, Analog Kid, Chemistry, and
Digiman.
Digital Man.
There ain't nothing better than the bass lines in Digiman.
Yeah, Digiman. But yeah, it's I love the album. I think it's a nice ending to that era. So
yeah, I mean, it's like some of the best. Like if you're if you're gonna say, man, I really want to learn some Neil Peart, then you probably say that because of, Subdivisions or, that album as a whole. It's just like one of those albums that's like, man, I want to go play now, or at least to me that's what it is. But
yeah, they were. I mean, you got to think they were still really young, and the tour. After they just gotten off the Moving Pictures tour,
what was weird is that this wasn't even 10 years after their debut album.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they were at the peak of their powers, and that was the first.
All went by very fast.
That was the first time I saw them. Was on the Signals tour. I was just a wee lad, but they were phenomenal, and their set list was just like great for if you're a Rush fan. So that's my number 2, Rush Signals.
Hey, guess what? Remember when he said it's hard to pick between Signals, Moving Pictures, and Permanent Waves? Well, you see, it is hard to pick between those 3, so I said, well, let's just pick 2. So my number 1 is Permanent Waves.
Your favorite of the 80s,
My favorite of the 80s, mostly because there's not a whole lot of 80s that I like. And if something is in the 80s, it's either from a 90s band or a 70s band, or it's like a gem, one of the few outliers, it's like just not my cup of tea. But
great
I do
album.
admit there are plenty of things in the 80s that are great, like Permanent Waves, which, from a 70s band, but whatever. Now, I do enjoy a lot of the other Rush albums, like Grace Under Pressure is great, and so is Power Windows, but I mean, it's Permanent Waves, dude. You don't be trading out Permanent Waves with anything else when it comes to 80s Rush. Spirit Radio, Free Will, Jacob's Ladder, that's side 1. It's beautiful. It's like you cry every time you hear it, like guaranteed. It's like tear duct opening. And then side 2 ends off with Natty Sigh, which
ease up on the dork speak there.
Look, I do this for a living. I'll be here all week. No, not really. I do this as a hobby, but Natty Sigh, it's great.
Natural Science.
Natural Science. Sorry.
He abbreviates.
Forgive
Rush
me. Forgive
song
me.
Titles.
Good gracious! One of the first bass lines that I learned, because it's cool. I mean, it's like kind of lopsided, but it's like in 7, but it doesn't feel like whoa, like a lot of 7 stuff does. But I digress. However you say. Good album, great album, Rush album, 80s, 1980.
Ushering in a new era, or rushering.
All right, we're back.
Speaking of dork speak.
All right. Okay. All right, we're back.
All right.
And now we have your number 1.
Whew. It was not easy. Well, actually it was, because my favorite album of the 1980s is The Police, Zenyatta Mondatta. Arguably, at this point in my life, my biggest influence as a drummer, Stuart Copeland. The production of the album is beautiful. Everything about the album.
I mean, except for the guitars being out of tune, I think it's great.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a phenomenal album. Driven to Tears, When the World is Running Down, You Make the Best of What's Still Around. That's a song title. Bit of a mouthful. Sting always had a little bit of a long song title fascination, but he wrote some great ones, and a lot of them were on this album. I just love this album. I can listen to it. I've been listening to it for years, and it's never gotten old. Canary in a Coal Mine is one of my ringtones.
Surprisingly enough, it was more of a pop album, I'd say. Would you agree with me on that? More of a pop album, popular album.
Was a pop album. It was
But it
before
didn't
they
suck.
broke through, though. They weren't huge yet,
Yeah.
but it's when they really started breaking through.
But it didn't suck, which, I think should be a guideline. You can write popular music, and you can write whatever type of music you want, really. And if you do it good, and if, you don't be generic and rhymes start with heart every 4 songs, every every 4 verses, then you'll do great, you know. And
yeah, they did kind of break the mold with the
seeing an album like that, seeing a bunch of albums like that, whatever time period they're from, any album where it's almost odd-defying that a pop album could be good. It's incredibly influential.
Mm-hmm. So that's our top 5s.
We have one more.
Our honorable mentions.
I'll let you start this one off.
Well, my honorable mention, I went between a couple, and I thought Peter Gabriel's "So" is an amazing album. There's a few albums, obviously Back in Black is an unqualified classic. Iron Maiden, Peace of Mind, the Bruce Dickinson era deserves some love for sure.
Yes, the Bruce Dickinson.
The Bruce Dickinson. But I'm going to have to go with U2, Unforgettable Fire. I love the older U2, back when they were really raw, like on the War album. And it's just Edge's guitar was really out in front. And once they got into the Joshua Tree and beyond, they focused more on songwriting and production, which is great. But I just love the young and ambitious, out to prove something.
The go-getter attitude.
Yeah. So, Unforgettable Fire just really, it was kind of the middle of those two worlds, and it was just so amazing. Pretty much every song on it I just love. It's got some deep cuts for you too, songs that are not quite as recognizable that I think stand up really good, really well. So that would be mine.
So now comes the point where you're wondering what my honorable mention is going to be. I don't have an honorable mention. I would have an honorable mention, but I feel that just trying to think of something when I'm not already fighting for what is going to fit in my list would be a little redundant. So, I can say though, Grace Under Pressure as my honorable mention. Though I already included a Rush album, and though he already included a Rush album, and though I'm pretty sure we included Rush albums in our 70s list, at least one. It's Rush. Okay, Grace Under Pressure. I really like Grace Under Pressure. I think it's really underrated. The first 3 songs, After Image, Early Distant Warning. What's the other?
Red Sector A.
Yep.
Distant Early Warning.
And then a couple other songs on that album. They're just really good, and maybe I think a lot of people are driven away because of the keyboard era and how it's the end of classical Rush, and it's like in the dead zone of oh, that's bad Rush. Hold on, no, there's good Rush. Go listen to good Rush. Don't bother with that. But I think it's kind of unfair to do that. There are plenty of good songs on every album, just about. Even the really latest albums, which are a whole nother thing. But I do think that Grace Under Pressure is the best in terms of album for later Rush stuff, or post-Signals Rush stuff. So I do think it does deserve at least my honorable mention.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for watching. We've got another long one here, but we will do our best to keep them coming at you on a weekly basis.
Bless you.
Thank you. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel here, feel free to do so. And if you'd like to get on our newsletter and receive updates and be the first to hear the new album when it's finished, which we are mixing the last song in 2 nights, so exciting times. You can join the newsletter at widetrackmusic.com, www.widetrackmusic.com. And till next time, keep on rocking.